So these data connectors then, they're defining where does ChatGPT get its stuff from.
You could 10x that, 100x that
Yeah.
by using AI to make all of those connections and think through all of those connections.
So what's deep research then? What's the difference?
Be able to ask the right questions in the right context, and the AI doesn't know your context.
Because we're not yet used to thinking in a new way that there's a new possibility. We're off again. Another podcast. Another week has gone by. All those people listening, I think, flipping it, has it been a week already?
It has.
What's happened in your week?
Well, this week, so I suppose we're probably going to, without ruin, to ruin the surprise of what we're going to talk about, although people have probably read the title.
Probably read the title.
They read the title. But yeah, so there's a lot of high-tech stuff going on work-wise. Yeah. But on the personal side, I've been dialing it back. I've recently reconstructed my fire pit area in the garden.
Back to basics here, is it?
Back to basics. And so, is
this a digital-free zone?
It's a digital-free zone. It's got a fire pit, got it all sorted, and put the festoon lights up.
No, you're worried it's going to be too windy for the festoon lights. Have they survived the night?
They've done well, actually. It was a nice ambiance. Created a lovely ambiance. And so the idea is my idea is a bit romantic, but to get all the kids around my kids, not
the whole street.
I'm not some kind of
Pied Piper.
My kids around and family, and then tell stories around the fire.
I love it.
And bring it back to
Are they
Detox?
Are they in a receptive mode? Would they listen to old Pa Buckle
if they want their pocket money and
their phones
and the Wi-Fi turned back on? They will.
Oh, I see. So it's not just a voluntary digital
I think
detox.
once they get there, you got to get them into the space.
Right.
Once they get into that space, it's a bit like a kind of laminar space, isn't it? Where
so have you got a lot of good stories to tell? You're not reading books.
Many.
You just you're a font of stories.
Well, I've started listening to this chap called Dr. Martin Shaw, who's a kind of mythologist, storyteller chappy. It's a bit kind of
just giving you material. Do you need other family elders to be around to share the storytelling?
Yeah, because that would be the tradition. That's how
but start small.
That's how I grew up in the jungles of Papua New Guinea. See, sitting around the fire with the elders
and
telling
listeners,
story.
if you think Richard's joking, next time you meet him, ask him about his time in Papua New Guinea. It really happened.
So it really happened. So
well, we could do a podcast one week then of a story. You could do a little storytelling, maybe a little side shoot.
Well, there's lots of people who've done that with business, haven't they? Like who moved the cheese and the colour accounting is another one that's worthwhile listening to.
And the goal. Ellie Goldratt.
So there's a lot of in the storytelling world. But I just encourage everyone, get outside.
Fire pit, festoon lights, digital detox, turn off the Wi-Fi.
And just...
Which means they can't listen to us at that moment.
After you've listened to us.
Yeah. Well, they would have listened to this to give them the idea, so that's okay. And so just finish this episode, then turn off the Wi-Fi, then go out and sit by your fire pit with the festoon lights and the kids and tell them a story. Oh, can you report back on how that went?
Or stare at a tree for half an hour. Okay. I get a lot of satisfaction out of staring at it. I've got a tree in my back garden and I stare at it.
Right. That's less of a group activity.
No, well, you can do it as a group.
Right.
But my kids were always like, "You're staring at that tree again." I was like, "I'm learning a lot by staring at this tree." So I'll tell you now.
Before we lose the last few listeners that have made it this far, I'm going to put a stop to it just there.
Excellent.
But I am interested. I want the feedback.
And we're going to do a feedback. Podcast. Cool.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast. We're up to episode 125 today. That's a bit of a roundish sort of number, so I thought I'd mention that. Anyway, it's me and Rich again.
Yep.
Hi, Rich.
Hello.
Back in the studio, and we're doing another episode for the owners and managers of small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. So each week we try and come up with some stuff. What's been going on recently then with previous episodes? If we're 125, what was 124?
124, we had a guest on. You had a guest on?
David
Ventura.
David Ventura. Yeah, what a great chap. I hope people have listened to him. Really engaging speaker. Passionate, absolutely passionate about looking after customers. There's so much talked in sales circles about prospecting and closing and winning the deal.
Yeah.
And he picks up the story from there, really.
From there, yeah.
Look after the customers you've got. Do they get the red carpet experience, or do they turn up and they're showing the back door?
Showing the back door, exactly.
Yeah, so that was 124.
124.
Then we had the series, didn't we?
The series, the trilogy. The Godfather series, 121 to 123, just one thing.
That's one thing. It's good that they were numbered 121, 122, 123, 123.
Yeah, kind of 123.
We couldn't have planned that better, could we?
No. Although we do plan every episode and what we talk about.
We did, yes. So the just one thing wasn't just one thing, it was just lots of things, but supposedly just one thing per speaker, per contributor, and even they couldn't stick to one thing.
A smorgasbord of business experience.
And great feedback, actually. Some super. And Joanna, thank you very much for your feedback on that. That was particularly gushing. She really enjoyed listening to all the input we got from people. So that was the trilogy, and then there was one before that. Listen to your customers. It was about the market moving on. Yeah. How would you know if your market's moving on?
Have you forgotten to listen to your customers?
Yeah.
Are you designing products that nobody wants to buy anymore? Creating services that nobody wants to purchase, that type of thing. How do you listen to your customers? Make sure you stay current.
Sometimes you tease us with a little bonus episode from the archives. Have you thought of one?
I haven't really got one.
No, okay. Well, we can save that for next week then now. And maybe listeners can... Well, I'll tell you what, just go... If you're looking on Spotify, YouTube, just go and have a look at the archive. See if there's a
sometimes I'll just do a spin. I'll do a swipe. Big swipe. Close my eyes, do a big swipe.
Like a spin the wheel lottery thing.
That's one.
Well, I'd encourage listeners to find their own this week. Look back through the list of titles and find something where the title jumps out to you. Good. So this week, you did give a bit of a hint in the preamble there that it might be something to do with tech. But in particular, we're back on AI again.
Back on AI.
And I don't want to lose audience straight away at that point, although they've seen the title. One thing that still surprised me, and we're going to talk about some recent developments which have intrigued and excited us in varying measures, but I'm still... I don't know how to best describe it. Am I disappointed, surprised? I don't know what. I was in a meeting earlier in the week where I was talking about using ChatGPT in its very basic form. Give me some ideas, classic sort of brainstorming partner type stuff. And my collocutor, do you like that?
Big word.
The person I was talking to basically hadn't yet used ChatGPT in a professional capacity in a company, not something on his radar. And it wasn't, if people are thinking, I bet they're old, it wasn't. It was 30-something who you'd think would be digital native, just not used it. And was doing it all longhand. And anyway, in the space of a pretty short demonstration, we realized that that's just taken a day out of your time because I've now created an entire marketing campaign with assets to be able to do what you were trying to do and present.
Exactly.
So I'm not sure whether I'm surprised, disappointed, just, reinforcing the way the world is really. But here we are today, we're going to be talking about the next new development. And yet there's still the basics aren't being picked up by hordes of people.
Well, we were saying earlier about you can live inside a tech bubble where you think a bit of an echo chamber of everybody thinking that if your organization uses a lot of AI or is starting to play with some of these tools, then you kind of think everyone is.
Now, something that we've rolled out now across all employees is the team version of ChatGPT. And there are other AIs available if you prefer to use Copilot or you want to use Perplexity or, there's plenty out there. But pick one. And maybe you don't be surprised if your employees don't start using it if you're not giving it to them and you're just relying on them using free versions. Yeah. And there's a real danger with the free version because of all the training implications. It will use your prompts and things you give it for training. Whereas as soon as you go to the team version, it's corporate, ring-fenced, workspace and all that sort of thing. So that's what triggered us, really. There was an announcement last week, I think it was, from HubSpot, and regular listeners will know that we've drunk the Kool-Aid on the whole HubSpot thing. And they were announcing the fact that they were the first CRM in the world that's created something called a data connector for GPT. So before we dive into that, maybe we better explain what a data connector is.
I'm going to guess.
If you break it down to the two words,
that it's something to do with connecting data sources between two different repositories of data. Idea?
And why did they call it that? How did they come up with the name?
It's almost too obvious, isn't it?
I know. Do you think there's a trick in there or something? Is it sort of a cryptic?
It's clearly not had some marketing on it, has it?
So why would one want to connect data, storytelling parbuckle, to a ChatGPT? What's the point of that?
Well, I don't know. I can't help but think of, and I know it's not like this yet, so I'm going to caveat this, but this is just Star Trek.
Well, you say not like this yet. There's lots of things in Star Trek.
But, it's kind of
wearable medical devices, flip communicators. We're just short of the beam me up, Scotty, aren't we?
Well, almost, yeah. But it's almost. I'm kind of like I know something, isn't it? It's like, what does he know? No, I suppose with this particular thing with the HubSpot, you can't chat to it, can you? Like you would like in Star Trek. Betraying my nerdiness, but it's coming. But it may be coming soon.
On ChatGPT, there's the conversation mode. You can have a bit of a chat to it.
Yeah.
So I'd say you can.
But in terms of interrogating your HubSpot through ChatGPT, at the moment, you can't quite. It's deep research, isn't it?
You can't. Yeah, sure. But okay, so ChatGPT generally you can, but with some of these data connectors not there in the. So we'll need to come back to that in a minute and explain the difference between deep research and.
But I was having that. With ChatGPT, we were talking the other day with a client about, just if you're in the car, you can just have a chat with ChatGPT if you want to learn something or. And
I know, nerdy though this is, I've done that on a couple of long car journeys. I've just had a chat with it about stuff. And sometimes it's work related. Another time I happened to be reading the David Mitchell book about the kings of England going back 1,000 years. And I stopped listening to the book every now and again, and I just pinged up the ChatGPT voice mode while I was driving, and I said, tell me a bit more about Edward VII then. What was it really that went on there? And it would give me a bit back, and I'd ask it back, and I'd be having an intellectual discussion about an ancient king of England with this robot. Bizarre. So you can do a bit of the chat. So these data connectors then, they're defining where does ChatGPT get its stuff from. And out of the box, as we know, it's already got the whole world's information because it's connected to, that's how it's been trained, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to connect it to anything for that. So this is about giving it access to new stuff. And there's a couple of data connectors that do work in chat mode. So let's just distinguish between the two. So chat is where you ask a question and it quickly comes back with the answer in a few seconds, depending whether you've chosen one model or another, which some of them are faster than others. But there's fewer in number. But if you can, and one of those, for example, is the Dropbox connector. So if you've got all your work on Dropbox, as we do, we're very Dropbox intensive users, aren't we? All of our stuff is on there, all the board minutes that we've taken, the various board meetings that we chair, all of the client work we've done. Basically, everything we've ever done for 15 years
lives there
in Wellmeadow is on there. So, and that is in chat mode. So we could just ask it any question about our own accounts, our contracts with clients, any work that we've done for clients. You've got to be careful there because you've got employee records on it and stuff. So all that stuff is essential to be aware of. But what's clever about it, and this works on the HubSpot one as well, is that we'll only give each user access to the data that they would have access to
in Dropbox
if they looked it up themselves. So if one of our team went on and asked it questions about the personnel files, it wouldn't serve it up, whereas it would for us. That's pretty neat. So that's in the chat bit. So what's deep research then? What's the difference? I'll let you break down the words again.
I think it's research that probably goes deeper.
Really?
Maybe
this podcast would be nothing without your insights. That's amazing, Rich.
I know. Yes,
you really are the sage.
Well, I guess
so. Deeper research.
Deeper
and they
research.
call that deep
and they
research.
call it deep research. Yeah.
So it does take a lot longer. This stuff, right? So you've got to be prepared to go and make a cup of tea.
Yeah.
I noticed recently, actually.
I would say even so, 5 minutes to do the research that some of these things do.
Yeah, given how long that would take.
It would take you 4 hours or something to.
And it gives you a little commentary of all the sources that it's looking at. And it gets up to like 40 sources, and it's really deep dived into each of those. So it's doing a lot of stuff. You're right.
And I would caveat as well to say you still got to check all this. I was getting it to do try and solve a Sudoku the other day for a marketing campaign coming your way soon.
Yeah.
And
stand by, folks.
And it didn't solve it.
No.
And maybe that was just my prompting. But
and it still can't solve the traveling salesman problem. In fact, Apple had a press release earlier last week, I think it was, where they'd done a test on all the different AI services that are out there. And they'd found an interesting phenomenon that compute power goes up with complexity of problem to a point,
right,
and then it falls off.
Right.
So basically, the AI looks at a problem, decides whether it's worth bothering with or not, because it thinks it can solve it, and it'll churn away and have a go. But if it looks at it and it thinks, nah, that looks a bit complicated for me, it doesn't even try.
So what you're basically saying is AI is a teenager.
Yeah. A pretty grumpy one. Only it doesn't storm out of the room or slam the door.
I can't be bothered with that.
Gives up.
I can't be bothered.
Yeah, I'll do the easy homework, but if it gets a bit tricky, nah, I'll play a game instead. That'll be when it comes back as a response. So, you sure you want to answer that question? Let's just have a game of Tetris.
Yeah.
I can knock a couple of quick Space Invaders clone. Sorry, I'm a different era there. Gosh. So where were we? Deep research. Yeah, so it takes about 5 minutes. It grabs all these different sources. And the point is that is where your data connectors come in differently, because some data connectors only work in this mode. And ta-da, that's where HubSpot came out this week and said, oh, look, we've got one. And sure enough, none of the other CRMs have got it yet. I guess it'll be about 48 hours time. They will have. Yeah. That'll be old news, because no one likes to be beaten by one of your competitors to something like that. So quite interesting.
And I suppose the old adage is still true of making sure that your data in your CRM is good. And we did a whole episode on this. Can't remember off the top of my head, but dirty data killing your business.
Dirty data.
Dirty data.
You only mentioned that because you wanted to have another go.
Dirty data. So I always think I'm Bob Hoskins whenever I say that.
Really? See, I'm thinking of Dirty Den at EastEnders.
Okay. Dirty, yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm more of a Phil Mitchell kind of. I've got all that Phil Mitchell energy going on.
I mean, yeah, I can see that in you.
Shout out to Archie, my brother in crime on that one. When me and Archie meet, Archie's been on this podcast. That's a great episode in the 50s somewhere, I think it was.
Yeah, Tales from the Trails.
When me and him, if he comes out over to meet, people do think it's a EastEnders reunion tour going on or something.
We could book at the local theatre.
Playing at the theatre or something. Yeah. An evening with Grant and Phil.
Well, we started talking about a live version of the podcast, so maybe we should get him across and he can be a guest. All right.
What was I saying? Yeah, talking about that. So if you're going to get ChatGPT to start doing some analysis on your data, then you still need to do the hard yards of making sure that you've got the right data in your CRM and the right disciplines around it, and just making sure, again, this week I was talking to someone, just how do you get your sales team engaged with just getting the data in, using it, just being efficient with it, making it easy, knowing which button to click, making it native, so that you've got all this in
comfortable with it. I can't believe this. Once again, it's a bit like the story I just gave just now. Am I surprised at this point? I'm not sure what. But salespeople still seem to come at CRMs with a predisposed view that they're an evil thing. That they are there to beat you up. You've got to feed it full of loads of information, which doesn't help you, but it helps your boss to point out what you're not doing. And that seems to be the default start point for so many salespeople. And everywhere we go, we say, why is it that you couldn't get a finance director to run a business's finances without finance software? You wouldn't be able to get a production manager to run a factory without MRP software. You probably wouldn't get many HR directors these days prepared to run an HR department without HR management software to manage absence and Bradford factor and holiday bookings and all that stuff. And yet salespeople still, for some reason, don't want the most amazing tools available that help them do their job. And maybe it's just because they've been misused in the past to beat them up, and they've had bad experiences.
Yeah,
I
think as well there is. And to be fair to the salespeople, if you're on the road, field sales, there is, like, if you're HR or accounting, whatever, you're normally sat behind a desk and you can do it with that. Field sales, you come out of a sales meeting and then you've got to get your laptop out, you get to the next one. So I think now there's so many tools, and we'll talk about this week with a client. There's lots and lots of tools, particularly HubSpot, the app, the phone, speech to text, all this. You can really slim that
you come up with some good stuff for that.
And then there's some of the integrations into HubSpot now, particularly around journey planning. Some of the guys there were saying, once you show them, and they go, "Oh my goodness, I can see this is going to save us." So I could take my a day's worth of journey planning for a 2-week period down to probably half a day for a month. Yeah. Well, you can
across
do
a team,
stuff. And that's just one. So it's all these little incremental gains, a bit like Sky. Sky cycling team, wasn't it? It was like 1% incremental gains. Keep adding them up, keep adding them up, keep adding them up. And then before you know it, you do all these little daily habits and you go, actually, way more efficient now.
And maybe a thought triggered by what you just said is that salespeople, especially those that are on the road a lot more than behind a desk, are very busy just coping with, getting away before the traffic builds up, navigating to my next client, on the way there, trying to get myself in the right frame of mind so that I'm ready to interact with that person, coming out, moving on to the next one. The last thing they've got time to do is just noodle around and explore with some of these features that are coming out. And so that's maybe our role sometimes, or the role of sales leaders, to pick the ones that suit the environment and introduce it. Yeah. So I think that's where we're at with this one, this idea of this data connector, coming back to the plot. If you do this, and you do need a Teams version of ChatGPT to do this, but it's only $30 a month, How much time have you got to save to justify $30 a month?
Yeah.
Not really a right lot. And then do this deep research thing. You can then ask it all the sort of ChatGPT style questions that you can think of, but knowing that it'll have access to the entirety of your HubSpot domain. Yeah. And you could have connected it also to your Dropbox or OneDrive. You could have also connected it to your Outlook emails and calendars. It's got all these connectors. And when you're in the Teams environment, none of that is used for training. So usually you hear that as one of the objections, don't you?
Yeah.
I don't want to feed the training models with all my data. Well, it's all ring-fenced off. And as I say, the permissions are all managed. So then, I suppose you could start to think about, well, what type of things could we ask it then that would be useful beyond the parlor game thing? And you had a little look at this, didn't you, as to what type of things would you be able to ask?
Yeah, well, you can ask anything really, can't you? I mean, I'm sort of in sales mode at the moment because I've been thinking about that with some people.
Yeah.
And even, you could imagine back to our example here with someone on the road doing sales, you could be asking ChatGPT, right, I'm about to go in to meet company ABC.
Yeah.
Right, give me the latest information on them. What, who am I meeting? What have we got in CRM? What's the latest sales like? Have we, what are the credit terms? What's the payments like? Or whatever data you've got. And this is why, back to that previous point, get the data in a structured way, or just get the data into HubSpot, whatever CRM you're using. And then you can be getting that digest. We were talking about, imagine you could get, because we talked about the Google Notebook, didn't we? Before?
Notebook LM.
Notebook LM. And imagine just being able to get that summary in the car on the way over. Like, great.
Amazing, isn't it? Something you could listen to. And there's a product called Hux coming out at the moment, which I'll probably cover in a future podcast because I'm still trying to get on the beta for that. But that is astounding. So, okay, take that thought a bit further, what you just said there then. Yeah. Imagine on the Friday afternoon when you're planning your following week, you just say to the ChatGPT with all these connectors built in, say, look at my calendar for next week, pick out all the meetings I've got, the client meetings or the prospecting meetings I've got, then go and have a look at HubSpot to see where I'm at with each of those. Are we negotiating a deal? Have I got a quote out live at the moment? Am I still prospect? Whatever. What's the stage at? Then go and just find out whatever you can on the internet about them and maybe the people by looking at LinkedIn, and just give me, like you said, a 5 or 10 minute summary. And you can even schedule a task now in ChatGPT. So you could say every morning on the day that's relevant, give me a 5 or 10 minute summary of the key things that I need to think about when I go into each of those meetings. Yeah. That'd be pretty, wouldn't it? Amazing. And then it could say things like, did you realize that of the last 10 quotes you've issued for this company, they've only closed one of them? So don't, you're going to probably get asked to produce another quote and you probably won't win it. So maybe discover that. Or if you've connected it to some other data, you could say, don't forget they're pretty slow payers. And you're about to go into a meeting, it'd be a good opportunity to drop it in the ear to say, by the way, your debtor days are up to 58 days. Could you have a word with accounts or something? Well, imagine if you connect it to some sort of sales coach thing as well. Right, okay, here's the problem. Like you say, you've got 10 quotes, only one's got to 1. Yeah. Right, where's it going wrong? This, that, and the other. Okay, why don't you try this approach? Why don't you try this approach going in? We think this might work. This, that, great. So that coaching like idea, live coaching. Yeah. Well, they'll get a point, and this is where Hux will come into play, which is being created by some ex-Google people that have jumped ship and created it. But imagine this is almost in your earpiece stuff, but it's not. Don't need that. I was just going to say that. Yeah. Okay. Even at the moment, let's say it's prep before the meeting, and it's giving you that. You get this impression when King Charles is walking around that there's some aide on his shoulder reminding him of everybody's name and what their spouse is called and why they're there. Yeah. Right. It's just, right, you're about to meet Mrs. Whatever, and her husband's called such and such, and she's the CEO of blah, 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 and she's done this. Right, great, thanks a lot. And then he comes across as all knowledgeable. Imagine if you had that going to every meeting. Don't forget, you're about to meet Richard and his son Ethan, and he's at school at the moment, and he's just done really well in his exams because he told you last week. So follow up on that. Or Richard's just going on holiday soon. Ask him if he's getting excited about it. That's all that, I couldn't remember that stuff. Could you? I haven't got that sort of memory. So it could do all that. Yeah. There are a couple of limitations to it because we've done some early exploring, as you can imagine, knowing us. And it can only do what the API lets it do. So it's not magic. Yeah. It's using HubSpot's API just like Dropbox has got an API or whatever else. So it's using that to get data. And that doesn't surface the content of meetings. So it'll tell you that a meeting happened. And annoyingly, within HubSpot, it's got the content of the meeting. It's got an AI summary of that meeting. generated by, I think we mentioned Fathom before.
Yeah.
Other note takers are available. Fireflies is another very popular one. And you can read it on the screen, but it won't be able to get it into the ChatGPT thing through the API. However, there is a workaround for those of you who've followed us this far and are thinking they're going to give it a go. When you use Fathom to do a meeting and it creates that summary, it does put it into HubSpot for you, but in a way that the API can't get it out. But it also sends it to you in an email.
Yeah.
So if you've connected the Outlook email connector, data connector to it, you can say, whenever you find a meeting and you want to know what we talked about, go and find the corresponding email. It'll be on the same day.
Yeah.
And get the notes from there. Then your coaching kicks in.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. So that's a good example, really, to get people to think differently. Because I would imagine if you ask most people, what would you use this for? They would ask it questions that would almost be quicker to just go into HubSpot and look up for yourself, because we're not yet used to thinking in a new way that there's a new possibility.
Yeah.
So you say, well, can you tell me the largest customer, or what was our most successful email campaign, or whatever? And they're all good questions, but you could filter. You could find that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I guess this is where people. Yeah, we're quite without kind of generalizing, but generalizing.
Go on, generalize away.
Generalize away. I love a good generalization.
Get away with murder. Go on then.
No, but there's the kind of Western mind is trained to think in a very linear fashion.
Oh, the Western mind.
The Hellenic roots, Greek thinking is very linear. And so other parts of the world are perhaps a bit more lateral in the way that they think.
Oh, is this your Papua New Guinea roots coming through again?
But yeah, like, I mean, Eastern thought's a bit more kind of both and type of thing. And kind of, so you've got this kind of, how can you, being able to think more laterally involves holding various things in creative tension. People like Napoleon were very good at this type of thing, holding lots of different thoughts together and then having that moment of kind of eureka. And,
where it synthesizes.
I massively mixed my metaphors there because eureka was...
Yeah, that wasn't Napoleon.
That wasn't Napoleon. But yeah.
Archimedes.
Archimedes, yeah. It was bathing, I believe. Wasn't it?
Yeah, well, so the myth goes. I'm not sure if it actually happened any more than Newton was sat under a tree when the apple fell.
But
it's a good story.
But yeah, I think learning to get out of that, like say, just go into HubSpot, ask a simple question. Actually, now we've got to think about, okay, what data sources have we got? How many different things can we connect? And then what would be the relationship between all of those? Yeah. And then start trying to almost retrain our brains in a way to think
of better questions.
A little less linearly.
Yeah.
So that, because that's what this is unlocking.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it would not be possible to hold all that information.
Couldn't you? And that's what, whilst people do criticize all of these AI tools for not being able to replicate humans in terms of reasoning and empathy and all those very human things, what it can do in spades way better than we can is recall.
Yeah.
And it's got access to it all.
Yeah.
So all we're talking about with this data connector is giving access to more personal stuff that you might find beneficial.
Yeah, I think you've still got to ask the right questions, right? I think that's where the human bit comes in, is you've still got to, and you've got to write that. You've got to be able to ask the right questions in the right context, and the AI doesn't know your context.
No,
because it's not in the meetings.
But it is learning from other people who are struggling from the same thing. So it's very meta. This you could just ask it, what would be a good question to ask you?
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking as I was saying that. Imagine if you just had cameras in every room and it was listening all the time to every conversation that was going on.
Okay, now you're Big Brother.
And that was like, but it would.
But that's where the data comes in. And you said before, you've got to have enough data in there for it to work on. But HubSpot themselves have made a big play of this. They're one of their sort of big badges of their AI advancements through Breeze and all that is the fact that there's an awful lot of unstructured data around. And yet all databases, CRM just being a boring version of one of them, have up till now just been structured databases. And if you don't put it in, it doesn't exist, the whole garbage in, garbage out thing. Well, imagine if garbage in, garbage out becomes obsolete because you're not choosing what goes in.
Yeah.
So it's not any more garbage than everything else that's going on. And assuming everything includes some good stuff, it can pick out the good stuff.
And that complaint as well, which is probably justified a lot of the time. What's the point of putting this in because it never gets used?
Yeah.
Well, actually,
that's up to you.
Now it can.
Yeah, don't wait for it to be put onto a report designed by IT because someone asked for it and actually you don't have access to it anyway and you just get beaten up when it goes wrong. instead think of this now as a perfect recall, 100% knowledgeable database of everything that happens at all of your customers through all of your colleagues that have spoken to them. So you're going into the customer and it'll say, oh, by the way, you won't know this, but yesterday afternoon, after you left the office, there was a support ticket raised where they've got a problem and it's really causing them some pain at the moment. You wouldn't have known that. You can go in and here's an update on it. And by the way, the person who's dealing with it is whatever.
Well, here's a thought experiment. If you think back to a couple of deals recently and actually really go back to how that came about. Now, okay, if you've had something transactional where it's just been a Google ad and it's come through or whatever, but some of the more complex deals and you think, well, that came about because so-and-so went there and then they bumped into so-and-so and they went to that show and they met them and then that opened up that opportunity. And then 6 months later, this happened. And that, most business owners can probably go through that process of thinking about how they got that particular deal.
For the deals they're familiar with.
The deals they're familiar with. Well, that's almost, you could 10x that, 100x that by using AI to make all of those connections and think through all of those connections.
Could you then use that to drive it more? Could you accelerate the pace?
Well, if you trained it and said, well, this is the sort of things I'm looking for. I had this type of conversation or this industry and these types of people maybe unlock things more than others.
You're going to a show, going to an exhibition, and it's an industry relevant exhibition. And you just ask your ChatGPT, find out who's going, because everyone says on LinkedIn, I'm going to the show next week. Blah, blah, blah. Find out who's going and give me a priority list of the people that I need to bump into with the relevant topics that matter for me to discuss with them because either they've announced something on their website or LinkedIn or I've had an email in the past from them or I've got something that I'm trying to get into that company or whatever. How much more targeted that would be than just turning up and going to the people that you instinctively know you've got to go and speak to because they're exhibiting or you see them walking around.
Well, if you could get their email, then you could almost send them you could almost use HeyGen or something like that to come up with a video of you asking the questions or putting the comments in. Because they've just released a load of new stuff that I'm having a look at the moment. So.
Yeah, it almost gets to people aren't ready for that.
Well, I was looking at you can link it to a knowledge base now. So I was going to put all the podcast into a knowledge base.
So you could just ask any question.
And then we could do our own Brian Holloway.
Yeah, that was amazing, wasn't it? When we saw that.
So,
gosh, okay. Well, look, as you could probably tell, dear listener, we're playing with these things at the cutting edge of what's coming out. And I know that most people don't have time to play with this. It's part of what we see our job to do, to bring this to our clients. So if you haven't, then understand, at least give it a bit of a go. Start playing around with the basic versions of ChatGPT or your chosen, Copilot or Gemini or whatever you want to do. And start getting used to that sideways thinking thing that Rich talks about. That would be good, just to come up with better questions, especially knowing now that you can give it private access to the stuff that you've got available on your ecosystem. Okay, we will come back in future episodes with war stories and examples of when we got back to work. Excellent. Thank you very much again then for listening to another episode of the SME Growth Podcast. 125 episodes of valuable content, all there waiting for you to dip in and out of. And maybe you could even use ChatGPT to find out the episodes that are most relevant to you. Hope you found it useful. Anyway, please tell your friends about it, drop them an email. And in the meantime, good luck with your business.